Fix-It Tony wanted to know that he read that the production studio left the car to rust away until fans reported it and put it on display. Is it common for production studios to abandon their props and let them wither away? Well, you're editorializing a little bit in your question. There are two, I'm going to say two things. One is that the Academy and American film in general has rarely valued its legacy to the degree that I think film lovers the world over believes that they ought. That's a fact. So, yes, it is common for production studios to abandon their props and let them wither away. Film history is replete with stories about this. And it's a problem, right? When Debbie Reynolds wanted to sell her costumes to the Academy and they didn't buy them, that's why so many of them went out of the country. And that's crazy. That's crazy. She had an unbelievable collection. We should be displaying it here. But I also want you to understand this from a film producer's standpoint and realize that a big film, any film really, is a company that gets formed for the purpose of making that movie. And the producer, there's a million producers, but there's one person whose job it is to build that company, make the film with that company. And then the moment that film is done, they want to dismantle that company. They don't want it around anymore. They don't need it. They don't want carried costs forward. So they don't want to pay for some storage space for some undefined amount of time into the future. They would like to wrap this thing up and move on. So I understand that from a financial standpoint. If you're, you've been given a certain amount of money from the studio to spend that money to make a movie, a storage space can cost you, like the smallest storage space can cost you $10,000 a year, right? Like no producer is going to want that line item on their books. So I understand from a producer's standpoint, why things tend to get withered away. And it's thorny if, you'd say to yourself, well, why don't you reach out to the fans? Right, but which fans? Who? You're going to piss off somebody by reaching out to somebody. All of this stuff needs a structure, which is why actually it's ultimately great that the Academy is finally opening up a museum. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is opening a museum to showcase and celebrate its legacy. So hopefully that, combined with the fact that prop collecting has become a giant industry in the past 20 years, very much more so even in the last 10 than the previous 10, means that perhaps there will be less of that denigration of the legacy of Okay, What are your thoughts? Tim Mitchell wants to know what my thoughts are about the all-female reboot of Ghostbusters. Do you believe the criticism towards the movie artistically were warranted? Really? Was the criticism artistic? I have a problem with a lot of the criticism of that film because a lot of it's misogynistic. I am not a fan of that film, but not because it stars women or because of the women that are in it. The four women that are in that movie are amazing, and they are the best part of that movie. They are what Kate McKinnon is doing in the background of scenes she's not even saying lines in is some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen. And everyone brings their A game. Everybody. They're all incredible. But I don't think the film is as good as the ladies that are in it. That being said, if I was talking to the director right now, I certainly would say that. I certainly would say that I think that the film doesn't give them enough of a platform to be as smart and brilliant and funny as they actually are. And I think the film is a little bit light for my taste. I think the thing that I love so much about the original Ghostbusters is that it is light, but it's also scary. And you feel the stakes at surprising times in the movie. That's a really hard mix to get right. And I didn't think that the all-female reboot got that right. But it wasn't because of the women at all. My God, I watched that movie again just to see what they do. I just think the script could have provided them a better platform to showcase their incredible talent. How about that? I once met Kristen Wiig at a fundraising dinner. This is like 12 or 13 years ago now. But I do believe that I might have elbowed Padma Lakshmi out of the way to tell Kristen Wiig that I thought she was a genius. I did not elbow anybody. Two amazing women were talking to each other, and I was only interested in talking to one of them. And by the way, Padma is a delightful human being. I spent a day with her a few years ago as part of an Emmy thing for the LA Times. Just absolutely wonderful human being. William Van Kullenberg says, how would you go about creating the effects to make the Michelin Marshmallow Man explode on screen? Difficulty with the 80s range of FX possibilities. So you're mistaking me for an effects director. That is not my training. And while I have a knowledge base that's adjacent to the knowledge base of an effects director, figuring out how you'd actually break down a shot like that is really, really difficult. And I would not pretend or presume to know just how difficult. That being said, I do have some opinions to offer on the matter. But the thing is that you phrase the question as if you think it's a single effect, but in the end result, it could be 5 different effects. What you really have to do to talk about how the Marshmallow Man would explode on screen is break down the action of him exploding into a set of super discrete, super planned out shots that you want to see, and then you have to figure out how to achieve each of those. It's possible, and I just watched the film a few weeks ago, but I wasn't taking note of this. It's possible that there's not even necessarily a specific shot in which you see him completely explode, that they imply that because of the storytelling you've got to do. You've got to see him explode. You've got to utilize or engineer an explosion that feels correct for the scale that he is. That's a whole set of things to choose. You'd be talking to your pyro guys and you'd saying, I want a fireball this big next to these miniatures. And they're like, okay, well, if you want a fireball this big, that's going to be too scale. You're going to have to build those miniatures in this scale. Then there are the shots of like the chunks of marshmallow landing on the street. Then there are the shots of the chunks of marshmallow hitting people. Those might be totally different substances. Then there's shots of the marshmallow like flowing in the street. That might be a totally different process. It's so a later question. Someone says, is it hard for me to not watch a movie like this and be thinking about how they did it? And it's not hard. If the plot is good, if the writing's good and the people in it are good, I have no problem with a suspension of disbelief. And I would submit that it's actually really interesting to go back to a sequence like that and watch it frame by frame and note how they told the story. Because a lot of times it literally could be that there's like fireball and then someone gets marshmallow on their face and some white stuff hits a wall and you feel like you watched the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man blow up. Case in point, I was thinking of replicating at some point, and I still might, the specific scene from a Tarantino film. And so I watched the scene and actually storyboarded it based on how it was shot and cut. And it was funny how quotidian the directing was in this sequence, because you think of Tarantino as like, you think that you have this impression of lots of film reference, but the reality is usually much more straightforward than like every shot is totally amazing. That's not a lot of films that are known for their beautiful cinematography. It's not the majority of shots that are amazing. It's these key frames, really. That is how an effects director would start to work with a director in figuring out they would ask the director very, very specific questions about what their vision of telling the story. And then because the effects director has with them a set of institutional knowledge of not only the processes at their disposal, but the physics involved, they would collaborate with the director to help them tell this. So the director might go, Well, famously, the original plan for the American Werewolf in London transformation was that it was all one shot. But for various reasons, they decided to break it up into separate shots. And I think it's a way stronger sequence the way that they filmed it. But they could have filmed it in one piece. Rick Baker actually worked that out.
Thank you so much for watching that video. If you'd like to further support us on Tested, there are many ways you can do so. One is through paid membership, and there are several tiers of that, each with their own set of unique bonuses. You can follow the links below for that, or you can go to our merch store where we are always coming up with brand new products. In honor of the holidays, we've got our Tested Ugly sweater in both black and we have a white one. We have some brand new patches, and this is a particular type that I made a joke about one day, and now it's a reality. You know, merit badges. When you're a Cub Scout or a Boy Scout, you get a merit badge for achieving something. Well, Tested now has demerit badges for when you screw something up, because that's just as important in learning as getting something right. So this is the badge for when you measure something once and have to cut it twice. This is the badge for when you accidentally hook up your electronics wrong and you release the mysterious blue smoke that powers them and they no longer work. And this one here is for when you get your finger caught in the lathe and it almost gets torn off. That might be quite me specific. I hope that never happens to you. These are all designed by Tested's own Jen Schachter, and they are not the only patches we're gonna release. In fact, these are just the beginning. If you have ideas for demerit badges that we should release, we'd love to hear them. We also still have our regular complement of posters, and they're all back in stock, including my hand-drawn toolboxes. I love seeing pictures you guys send us of these hanging in your maker spaces and your offices, your man caves, and your sheds around the world. Get to the store, follow the links below, and hey, some of these might make great Christmas presents for the makers in your life. Thanks, you guys. Happy holidays.